welcome to Talks at Google. My name is Jason Andreas, and I have the immense pleasure of welcoming breakout Detroit-bred singer and songwriter Quinn XCII today. Quinn joins us today to discuss everything from his music roots here in the city of Detroit, how he's created and developed such a unique sound, which blurs things like pop, hip-hop, alternative, and soul music, and really dig into his latest album that just came out a few months ago, which, by the way, is absolutely fantastic. I'm obsessed with it. It's called A Letter to My Younger Self, an album that radiates hope, and I think I have this right, kind of this idea that the tough times in life, especially that we're going through right now, are a very small chapter in a much greater life story, very fitting for everything, as I mentioned, that we're encountering today. So welcome, Quinn. A huge thank you for joining us today to talk about you, your music, and so much more.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. This is a massive pleasure to be talking to you guys. And off the air, we were talking about our share of Michigan State history. And I didn't know you played basketball at the school. So for everyone listening, I went to Michigan State, so that's a really cool thing for me to know. And so go green. And yeah, man, this is awesome. So thanks for having me.
Go away. I very unmodestly have my jersey hanging behind me. So I'm a very modest person, but I'm proud of it. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. I know you probably tell this story hundreds of times and it'll catch on eventually, but I love the story too. Can you dig in a little bit and tell us about the background of your name? I think it's a very interesting story for those of us that are listening and might not know where it comes from.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Mike. That's like my birth name. And, but I wanted to make, when I was making music growing up, I thought Mike T was what I was going by. It was like a rapper name. I had a little moniker and I just didn't think it was too professional sounding. I just didn't think it really stuck. So I wanted to find something that kind of captured what represented me in my story and kind of like my philosophy on life and hard work and all that stuff. And so I came up with this acronym called Quinn, which stands for Quit Unless Your Instincts Are Never Neglected. And I set myself on that acronym because I think a lot of myself growing up was based in fear and anxiety of showing people this side of me, of my music and stuff. I was very shy as a kid and I never really wanted to sort of express to others what my big life goals were and what I wanted to do. And in fear of getting laughed at and just kind of being made fun of. And so I for a while, I was considering just stopping pursuing my dream of music because I just couldn't really live up to the idea of showing that to other people. I was very, like I said, reserved and shy and stuff. So the acronym Quit Unless Your Instincts Are Never Neglected really comes from, quit if you really just can't go for it. But if there's something deep down inside you that you feel you just can't shake and you really want to just stick with and feels good, I would really just preach to my fans that, you have to do that. You have to just follow your passion and your intuition. And I think that really is a pretty universal way of thinking, I think. And I think it applies to a lot of different industries. So yeah, that's how you get Quinn. And then the XCII is the Roman numeral for 1992, which was the year I was born. So a little less of a story there, but I just kind of slapped the two together. And yeah, I think that's a little more interesting than Mike T. So I'm happy with it. Yeah. You
can't hide your age either. Everyone knows you were born in 92 now.
Yeah, exactly. So as I get older, this is going to be, I think I'm going to regret the name a bit, but I'm okay for it right now.
It's working now. You're doing amazing. So congratulations on all of the success so far. Let's rewind it a little bit. We talked a little bit about Detroit. I'm rocking my Detroit is for Lovers shirt today, representing. When did you start getting into music? I love going into the backstories. You talked a little bit about Michigan State, where you started to kind of come into your own and build some confidence and hit that why in the road. Do I want to pursue this or not? You are from Detroit, the home of Motown. Can you talk a little bit about your beginnings? Did the Motown background play into your musical foundations? Dig in there a little bit if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Yeah. It did 100%. Motown was something my parents played around the house growing up when I was just a kid, and they were throwing parties for their friends. And I think that was the first genre that I really got introduced to before I even really knew what music was. I just knew that type of music really made, I'm sure they had some cocktails and they had, other things that were getting them in the mood, but like the music was really operating that entire night, that they always had parties. And I was so drawn to just like what that stuff was how it was making people feel in a positive way. And so, yeah, Motown, to answer your question, Motown is like the backbone, I would say, of like my inspiration for the music that I make. It's really based in what I call like ear candy melodies, like things that just kind of get rooted in your ear and you can't get it out of your head. And it's timeless music. And I think that really for myself is my goal, is to make stuff that will always be relevant, will always kind of have a fan base no matter what year it is. And for me, that's what Motown does. So yeah, man, Motown is a huge inspiration to me. So I really got on that wave, being from the Midwest and Detroit. So yeah, but there's other genres, like there's things like alternative rock and reggae and pop music that I got to get into as I got older. I sort of fell in love with my own tastes in music. And so it is all kind of this melting pot of different stuff. And I think it really speaks for my music, because that's really what it is. It's just a melting pot of a lot of different genres, a lot of different takes on people who have done it before me. And I'm just trying to kind of, spit it out in my own vocabulary and just do it my way. But yeah, I definitely take inspiration from a lot of different aspects of music, for sure.
And I love that about music today. Everything is so blended. You've got country and hip hop being mixed. You've got electronic and soul being mixed. There's all of these really cool things that are happening. Any favorite Motown artists that really kind of stuck with you, or any kind of go-tos that were like a core of your inspiration from being in the Detroit area?
Yeah. So the Jackson 5 was absolutely massive with me. I'm not going to say when I was growing up, because clearly I wasn't growing up with the Jackson 5, but when I was growing up, my parents were playing for me. That was always the band that really, stuck with me. I think the Temptations, Sam Cooke. I wouldn't call Sam Cooke a Motown artist, but still a soul artist and someone who really inspired me as well. James Brown, Diana Ross. There's a lot. So I think in the grand scheme of things, they had a much bigger impact on my style than I probably anticipated, which is cool though, because I'm a really big fan of those people, and it's awesome.
Yeah, like you said, the music is absolutely timeless. You can listen to it with your kids. You can listen to it with your parents. It transcends generations. So that's fantastic. One more Detroit question. We might come back to Detroit, but one more Detroit question. Are you a Lafayette guy or an American guy?
Lafayette all day. I got this question recently too, and I don't even know how it's a question, honestly. I just if you know what we're talking about, it's two restaurants next to each other downtown Detroit. They make chili dogs and chili fries and stuff, but one of them has been around for like 100 years. The other is more current, and not to throw any shade at American Coney Island, but Lafayette's just it's like the staple, I think, of Detroit in a way. So I'm all day a Lafayette guy.
That's great. Same here. I all my friends and colleagues and family that visits Detroit, I always take them to both American and Lafayette and let them choose for themselves. And they're like, "This is what Coney Island's all about. It's just basically hot dogs." I'm like, "Yeah, man, but late night, they're delicious."
Oh my gosh, they're the best. They're the best.
That's awesome. We talked a little bit too, and this was mentioned already. You, like me, fellow Michigan State Spartan. Your time in East Lansing was when you really started kind of gaining momentum and exposure as an artist. You started experimenting with music and beats and a little bit of rapping and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that era, I guess, kind of in your development? I think it's a really interesting one, because you're in college and you're expected to follow this certain path, right? Go to class, get your degree, pick your major, and set yourself on the way to what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So maybe talk a little bit about that. And if you ever had any doubts in your mind going through Michigan State, spending time in East Lansing, about should I be doing this? Should I be focused on school versus music? How did that play out for you? Totally.
Yeah. For me, I was always I'll be honest, I just wasn't a great student. And it wasn't that it was kind of more like my attention span was very, very weak. I had a lot of ADD, and I was just learning more about myself, like growing up and in through college, that I really wanted a career that was rooted in something that I really loved. And I don't know how that happened. I think it might have been just through the countless courses I was taking, that it just sort of, by trial and error, I just figured out I wasn't really into anything I was studying. And I always had music on the side, and I was like, this is a passion of mine. Like, why can't I make this a job? But no, to answer your question, yeah, like there was a lot of times where I was skipping class, admittedly, to go make music. I was actually driving to our rival college, Ann Arbor, U of M, to go work with a buddy of mine, AOK, who's also an artist on Columbia Records with me. And he's also like one of my best friends I've known since like the third grade, but he was making music over in Ann Arbor. And so I would drive to Ann Arbor like 45 minutes, probably like 3 to 4 times a week, and make music with him, skipping class. And obviously looking back at it now, I can sort of laugh about it, but that was a pretty risky thing to do, because I was really taking a gamble. But again, it goes back to the name. I think I was really based, like my whole mindset was really just based around like making something work, at least taking a crack at something while I had the chance to, at a young age, to make something work that I really loved. Because I knew I would, at some point with a college degree, I'd find a job. I would make ends meet at some time. But I really thought of college as a really opportune time in my life to really go for my dream. And that was music. And so, it was scary for sure. But I had a lot of confidence, honestly. I just, something about music just really always, I feel like I never could master school the way that I don't want to say master, but excel at music. There was always a big difference there. And so the answer was very clear that music was like the best thing I could do. And thank God turned into a career. So I'm super fortunate. Yeah.
And it's awesome too. There's so many people who are so hesitant to chase dreams, right? Because they might sound silly to somebody, or they might be outside of the norm of what the path is that most people take. So going on that path of most resistance sometimes is more challenging, but also more rewarding. That's fantastic.
Totally. Yeah.
You also mentioned, you led me into this because I was going to talk a little bit about your time with AOK. You obviously, you perform as a solo artist, but you also work with a group of friends called the Mutual Friends. That includes AOK, Chelsea Cutler, and Jeremy Zucker. I know you met Alex or AOK in grade school. Can you talk about how all of you guys came together? You mentioned spending time with AOK in Ann Arbor. How did Chelsea and Jeremy get pulled into that crew, and how do you guys all work together?
Yeah. So like you said, I grew up with Alex, like 5 to 6 blocks down the street from me. We grew up and we officially kind of like became friends in the 3rd grade, I always say. And then we just sort of it stuck from there. And, but we didn't, by any means, we weren't making music at that age. We were just being kids and whatever. And then around high school, like midway through my junior year, going into my senior year, I got really into writing music, writing little raps, like 16 bars. I would go on YouTube and download instrumentals illegally and, write stuff. And I thought it was the most fun thing ever. And then I had caught wind that someone had told me, was making music of his own and his production and instrumentals. And he was more into the science of software and the engineering aspect of it. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I mean, that's not something I do, but I would love to kind of pair with someone who can facilitate that aspect of the music for me. And we hung out one day after school and made a demo, and it sucked, but it was something we really, the process was really cool. And, we fell in love with just, again, like the process of making music. It just never gets old. There's always a new development that you can encounter with music. It's never the same story. So we caught wind of that the second we started making music together. And he's for sure my favorite person to collaborate to this day. And I think that's really special to have someone who you're genuinely friends with outside of your career, but you also get to share that passion together and kind of see each other's careers excel. So it's been really cool. But then also to Jeremy and Zucker, Jeremy and Chelsea, how they tie into the story is Chelsea reached out to us back in the day when we were throwing music on SoundCloud for free. She had caught wind of our page, and she shot us a direct message and, said I'm a big fan. And Alex checked her music out and fell in love with her sound. And we just kind of stayed in touch ever since, and eventually met a year later in New York and made some music together. And she ended up getting signed by my manager as a client. And the same thing with Jeremy. Jeremy messaged me on SoundCloud, said he was a fan. I checked his music out, thought it was great. He met Jesse, my manager. Jesse signed him. So it was all very organic. And it's kind of a rare story to be telling in the industry, because I think a lot of these things are very much based in networking and who you know. But the 4 of us all kind of met, like I said, very naturally. And I think that's why it's so cool. And I think it's so authentic, and people can see that because it's not this like contrived industry connection that, like, I didn't grow up with like a person in the record label business, or, nor did Chelsea or Jeremy. And so it's cool. I don't know. We just all kind of grew up as normal kids, and we just reached out to each other and found out that we were compatible musically. And I don't know, just kind of ran with it.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. You touched on a couple interesting points there, and I'll skip ahead in some of my questions here because I think it's a really good segue. You talked a little bit about spending time with AOK and he being more into the technological side of putting beats together and mixing music. And then you also talked about how you kind of came together with both Jeremy and Chelsea based on just finding each other online. So sometimes the word technology can be a tough word to swallow in the music industry, but a lot of folks have really started to adapt to it. You guys have obviously, a nice thing about technology is that allowed kids in their college dorm rooms to start experimenting with beat making software and recording software. And then again, as you mentioned, something like SoundCloud where you can upload your music, and then, you know, two other artists were able to reach out to you, connect, and now you guys are all friends and collaborators. Can you talk a little bit about how you balance maybe the goods and bads of technology, social media, and all of these different things that you have at your disposal, with how you kind of progress yourself as a musician?
Totally. I mean, we'll start with the positives, I guess. I mean, there's stuff like SoundCloud and these free platforms that really give massive benefits to independent artists who don't, you know, have a signed management company, or they're not signed to a label. And like, for example, for myself, starting out, Alex and I would put our music for free on SoundCloud, and sure enough, we were gaining thousands in fans like every month, it seemed like. And that wasn't through the help of, you know, someone in the industry. It was just very much based in this free website that allowed us to put our music up on there. So I think there's really awesome platforms that give kids who can just, like you said, work right out of their bedroom. It gives them such an advantage and such a benefit, and just, it really kickstarts their career. And I think without platforms like that, I don't think you'd be listening to a lot of your favorite artists right now, because those are the things that really help people get their music out there, get their name out there. That's always everyone's big question, is like, how do I get my sound out there? How do I get my name out there? And these free platforms allow that to happen. So I really can't stress how cool and how much I love SoundCloud because of that reason. Go to the negatives though, you know, like you said, social media and, you know, things like Twitter, Instagram, obviously, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's very important to not get too swept up under the rug with what people's comments are on, whether it's your album, your latest single, how you're dressing, whatever, you know, Twitter is really the worst at it. It's designed, I think, just to nitpick at people. And I think the balance is so important, and especially in music, where you just have, as a public figure, I think, and I say that very modestly, but like as someone who has followers, I think it is important for me to really balance my time on social media and also just stay in reality and stop looking at a screen so much, because you can really get into a bad headspace if you're constantly just checking, you know, comments and what people are saying about you. But on the upside, there's been some really positive messages I've got from people about how the music has helped them with depression and prevented them from suicide, and how it's helped with a loved one who's passed away or illnesses. And that's the stuff I really cherish, and just hearing the stories about people who have really been impacted by the stuff I've been making. That's why I love social media, and it gets me to connect with fans in a very, very pretty humble way. And so I think that's the positive of social media for sure. But like I said, it's a balance. I have a yin yang tat on my arm, and that reminds me to, you know, only a couple hours on social media and then get off of it for the day, you know, because it's important.
That's awesome. Great feedback as well. And that leads me into the new album, right? So the new album came out early this year. It's called A Letter to My Younger Self. So you released this album, not by choice, obviously, during a global pandemic and a massive quarantine. Mm-hmm. You did kind of this live from home album release. You really were able to take advantage of technology and social media to connect with fans, potentially new fans, in a time where you're not able to get out on the road and do concerts, do meet and greets, all of those different things. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like spending all this time putting this album together and then making that decision? How do we release this? What do we do? What does that look like for you from an artist perspective? Yeah.
I mean, you know, clearly I'd be lying if I said this was I was looking forward to this time of releasing an album, but you got to just kind of roll with the punches. And this thing took us like a year to make. So I think I was going to release it no matter what was going on in the world, because I just wanted it to get out, and I was sick of listening to it on my headphones. I just wanted people to, you know, absorb it and finally, and just and get feedback on it. But yeah, I think this is a time where everyone is really pivoting in ways, and whether you're a creative or, it doesn't really matter what industry you're in, you're kind of pulling an audible right now, and you're finding ways to do things differently. And as painful as a time as this is, I think it actually is good for most of us, because it's letting us kind of flex that creative muscle that we probably hadn't worked very often. And it's showing us that we can, like I said, pivot in ways that we probably didn't expect. And with limited resources, make ends meet. So for me, I've been doing a lot of the virtual concerts that I'm sure people have seen online right now, and fan meet and greets and Q&As and interviews like this, for example, and just kind of finding a way to continue that narrative about the album and promote it more, and just promoting myself more, obviously, and just hoping that this isn't a really cold period for me, because I still have to get my face out there. I still have to push the music and hopefully have people listen to it. But it's challenging, and I think everyone's realizing that. And I think what's so good though about music is that I think a lot of people are a little nervous of how their industries are going to shape up once things get back to normal.
Sure.
I think in music though, everyone really just longs that human connection, and I think concerts will come back really strong, and I'm constantly looking forward to that. I try not to think about it too much, because it's pretty sad to think about the concerts. I would be on tour right now, actually, so it's kind of a weird time for me. But yeah, I'm really trying to stay optimistic, and again, like I said, just continuing to work on how to stay creative and finding new ways to just sort of I don't want to say stay relevant, but just continue to just progress my career in a pretty weird time. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure, but I think I'm learning how to do it day by day.
No, that's awesome. And I'll tell you, as a music fan, we appreciate, the presence that a lot of artists have provided. There's been a lot of creativity that's gone into how fans have been able to interact with musicians and artists in all sorts of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
You also did, I joined a live stream not too long ago that you also partnered with the Innocence Project to raise money during that live stream as well, which kind of goes into that creativity that I was talking about. Not only are you interacting with fans, but you're doing some really great good as well. Can you talk a little bit about the Innocence Project and how kind of that thought sparked in your mind to do that live stream with them?
Yeah. So we did this project, or we did this live stream. It was a FIFA. Everyone familiar with the video game FIFA soccer game, which I'm a huge fan of. I'm a big soccer fan. We decided to go on Twitch and do this live stream, a little tournament of some friends of mine who are some musicians and a couple of athletes, and just partner and play FIFA online and stream it. But also in doing that, we were promoting, like you said, the Innocence Project, which is an organization that tries to help wrongly convicted people who have been given prison sentences that were wrongfully convicted. And so I think it was the perfect time to do something like this with an organization like the Innocence Project, with all the racial injustice going on, and just the state of the world right now has been very hostile. I think this was a really good organization to get myself involved with. It's something that, like on Netflix, for example, it makes for great TV when you watch these documentaries and stuff, and you find these stories that are pretty amazing. But then you realize that they're real. These are real people feeling like going through these real situations. And the Innocence Project has a show on Netflix called The Innocent Files. Mm-hmm. And that's how I actually caught wind of them. And I thought it was so fascinating how they broke down each episode with each person. And I don't know, it created a little more reality of the situation. I think we just commonly watch these things and we think they're really, compelling and interesting, but then for me to get involved with the people who are helping I don't even want to say criminals, because they're not criminals, but those people who are wrongfully convicted. It was just something I was really, really drawn to. And I just wanted to promote that more. And so we had, for like 4 hours, we had the Twitch stream going, and we had their link, and people were donating, and I think we raised a few $1,000s for it. So it was really cool to do that. And that's something I want to continue doing and continue getting my feet wet in the philanthropy aspect of being, like I said, a public figure. But that was a cool thing to do for sure. And so anyone listening, go check them out. They're a really amazing organization.
Awesome. We could definitely include the link once we get this up live on YouTube as well, because it's a fantastic foundation. To me, there's nothing more mind-boggling and sad and happy at the same time as when you see somebody who's been released after 30 or 40 years of incarceration due to like a DNA test that just came out. And you're like, I just can't even imagine what that would be like. And that's a significant major case, but there's a lot of other cases out there. So thank you for bringing awareness to that. That's a really important cause. And it's great to see that you're supporting that. And we'll definitely share some more information around that. Thank you.
Oh, of course.
Let me pause real quick. I'd love to get some questions from the audience via the live stream. So if you're watching now, if you want to add some questions to the chat box, which would be to your right on the screen, go ahead and type those in. We'll get to those shortly. I've got a few more questions here to keep us guided, and then we'll jump to a couple audience questions here right before we close off. Let's go back to the new album and some of the technology we were talking about, the live streaming and things of that nature. The last two music videos that you released that came from this album, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Coffee. So that, I guess maybe that was the first one that came out. So I believe it was filmed by your wife. You're recently married. Congratulations. Yeah, on her phone.
Thank you.
And it was like you and her, and I think Mark Bassey showed up in the video because he's part of the song, a fantastic singer as well. And he was included. It's like you guys were just hanging out, but it's a beautifully done video. Like, can you talk about that process? Was it easier or harder compared to like shooting a normal music video when you've got, all of these people directing you where to go? What was that process like?
Yeah. Well, thanks for saying it, man. I appreciate it. That was like you said, it was all done on an iPhone, and it was shot during this quarantine that we've been in. And we had limited resources, but we thought there was something really cool about making this, because we were so limited to what we could use. We thought it would be kind of cool to make a DIY style video of just something off your iPhone with sparsed in like security footage because we actually have security cameras at my house. So it was nice to actually use that footage. But yeah, it was like I said, like, there's something really weird about this time, because I think it's allowing things that we hadn't thought of that would be cool ideas to come to light and actually give them a chance to like be seen. And this was the best example I think of that, is because we were able to just, we had our director Blythe Thomas, who lives in New York City, on Zoom, similar to this. And she was literally just calling out actions to my wife Macy on angles to like shoot me with her phone. And just, I don't know. It was the craziest thing to witness, and the fact that it actually turned out, I think, really cool. And I think it's probably one of my favorite videos, just because there is such a story about it. And it was just a good reminder of like how we can still be creative, like I said, with limited resources and make something actually look pretty damn cool. So I'm happy about it. That was a fun time.
Yeah, it looks awesome, and it's personal as well, right? It's shot in your house, which is typically not the case.
My dogs are in it. It's my house.
Your bed.
My bed. Yeah, like you basically see all of my house in that video, so it was cool.
That's why it's important you have security cameras as well, because now everyone knows what your house looks like.
Right. Maybe I need to check to see if the address was shown. I don't think it was. But,
good. Yeah, good to know. So you mentioned some of the themes on this album too. So let's dig in a little bit more there. There's a lot of difficult subject matter, not just in this album, but some of your previous albums, and difficult in generality. But you attack this stuff head on. Topics like confusion, depression, anxiety, things of that. But overarching across this entire album and previous albums, you always have this theme of hope as well. Can you kind of talk about how that plays into your songwriting process? Like, do you start with a concept like that? Do you start with lyrics? Do you start with, kind of the musical background, the beat, the hook? We'd love to hear a little bit more about how you kind of go about that process and take some of these difficult subjects and weave them into these beautiful melodic songs.
Yeah. It's weird. I've always said there's not like a formula to making music or a song. For me personally, I don't like forcing that creative process, because I think the second you do that, you cripple your chances of making something really cool. So for me, if I had to choose, though, I would say of how do I start a song, it's always with the melodies. Kind of going back to that discussion about Motown, I've always thought that the melody is the most important aspect of a record, because no matter what you're saying, sometimes the melody is just that good that it doesn't even really matter to the lyrics. There's something about it that instantly hooks you. So for me, it's always been melodies. And then through doing vocal takes and sort of humming words, often I get little words that actually spit out of my mouth, like little accidents that happen where a lyric is actually sort of like thrown on the canvas, so to speak. And I like it a lot, and I just run with that one word and create the idea from there. I like that you said, though, a lot of the music does have that kind of overarching theme of hopefulness, because I think that is the type of person I am. I try to, see the good in every situation, and I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. So I think that really does translate with my music. There is this sort of, like I said, like this constant theme of things are going to be okay, no matter what happens. I don't know why that is. I don't necessarily know how I constantly sort of go in that direction when I write stuff. Nor do I really know how I land on the topics that I do. I guess it's just really about kind of catching that moment of like lightning in a bottle and just because that's really what music is. It's just sort of capturing magic in the span of 3 minutes or however long your song is, and just hoping it sticks and hoping people resonate with it. So it's a goofy thing to do sometimes. You kind of scratch your head at wondering how some of these ideas come about, but because it's not as analytical as things maybe at Google or stuff. It's more it's more about just like just taking. A friend of mine, John Bellion, who's an incredible musician, he says like capturing like squiggles in the sky and grabbing those down and holding on to them for as long as they can, because you're capturing ideas that no one else sees. It's just in your head. So it's weird, man. I don't know. It's a little bit of wizardry or something. I don't know, but I think the best thing I can do, like I said, is just go into a studio session without any, ideas or premeditated thoughts or expectations. I just kind of try to go in with a clear mindset, a blank canvas, and see what happens. It's kind of the best answer I could give you. It's strange. It's strange.
Well, it's one of those questions where it's nearly impossible to answer, right?
It is.
Because it can change with every album, with every song. It could change on a daily, hourly, minutely basis, depending on how you're feeling and what your inspirations are. You could go into the studio with all the thoughts in line and they crumble, or you go with nothing in your mind and all of a sudden they just hit. So
right.
Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about maybe just the title of the album, but also the song "A Letter to My Younger Self," which is awesome. It features Logic, who does an awesome spot on the song as well. So it's not just the title track, but it kind of captures this perspective perfectly that we're talking about. So things may seem tough right now, but hang in there; they're going to get better. And it's I'm a fairly new father. I've got 2 young daughters, and so
congratulations.
Thank you. It hit me right in the heart because it's like, not only am I thinking about this for myself, but for my kids as well. So, where did that song come from, and talk about maybe the inspirations behind that?
Yeah, of course. It's cool to kind of segue from what you just said. Logic actually just had a son as well. So in that verse, he actually does a little bit of speaking to his son and kind of giving him, words of wisdom and advice. But that song really, the album, because it's the self-titled track off the album. I'll start with the album. I think I wanted to make a project that was really based around high school, because I think and I think a lot of people's high school experience, but I'll say mine, it was a very like formative time for me. And it really like showed me the type of person that I wanted to be and the type of person that I was. And I think those are the 4 years that people can either really blossom from in a positive way or can really kind of get destroyed by. And high school is a pretty unforgiving place. And you can either walk away from it smiling or crying, honestly. For me, I was lucky enough to have a pretty good high school experience, but I just think there's so much subject matter in high school, and there's so many things that are going on in those 4 years that it was a really good way to kind of make an album based around it. There's 12 songs in the album, and so I just felt like 12 songs, like there's 12 different things I talked about high school in it, and I could have made 20 songs, but there's a lot of depth to that topic. And so I thought it was a really cool thing. And I've always been a sucker for stuff like American Pie and high school movies and stuff. So it was a pretty no-brainer once I landed on the idea. But the song itself is about what I would say to my younger self. And that's really the message about the album, is just what I would tell my younger self during those times. What advice I would give him as, a 28-year-old who recently married and, has a little bit more maturity under my belt, but I'm still obviously learning a lot, like what I would say to that person. And so it's based around that, but even more deeply, I think it really just talks about, not getting too beat up not beating yourself up too much about things that don't go your way during that time. Because I think we have a lot of tunnel vision in high school. And I think it's really, really important to know that, like you said earlier in the interview, it's just a little chapter of the greater story of your life. I think you said it perfectly. So, I'm just trying to give a little bit of hopefulness, back to that word, like a little light to some kids who might be going through high school right now and not having the best time, and just showing them that, you don't realize it yet, but there's going to be a lot more life experience you're going to have later. So, just don't take it so seriously, enjoy yourself.
Right. With age comes wisdom, right?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
I still need a lot more. I need to age a lot more because I'm still lacking a lot. But yeah,
so am I. So am I.
Great though. I like on the lighter side of things. I like this song, the song titled "Stacy" as well. So it feels a bit like an homage to maybe the complications and confusions of finding love or quote unquote love in high school. Yeah. Do I have that right, or is there another meaning to the song?
Nope, you nailed it. You nailed it. It's about a girl that I had a crush on, and who was the senior, the hot senior girl when I was a freshman. And like you said, just what I thought was love, and clearly was not. It was just a crush. But again, it goes kind of back to tunnel vision and just that idea that you have it all figured out, and clearly you have really no idea what's going on. But no, I'm happy you said that. That's one of my favorites off the project, and that's a cool one to play live. So hopefully when things get back to normal, I can do that again. But yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's definitely got a great melody and definitely a sing-along song for sure. And I love the video too. There's a great video out there on YouTube for it as well. So take a look at that as well.
Thank you.
If you want to check that out. Changing gears, still talking about songs, but going from something kind of light and more kind of poppy, soulful to this is probably my favorite song on the album. I don't know what that says about me, but the song "Second Time Around." Yeah, it's so beautiful. It's so raw. I remember the first time I was listening through the album, and just kind of the piano starts, and it's a very kind of haunting song, and I mean that obviously in the best of ways. And the lyrics are just so beautiful. They're so heavy. It really just kind of stopped me in my tracks. So I really wanted to ask you to see if you could peel back the layers a little bit as to where that song comes from, and what does the title "Second Time Around" mean to you?
Yeah. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. That's a really, it's probably up to this point in my career, probably the most powerful song I've put out. Probably the most vulnerable I've been on a song. I made that with a guy, Johan Carlson, who's an extremely talented pop writer, and was in a band called Carolina Liar. I don't know if you're familiar with that band, but he and I made that song together, and we got into talking about. It's funny when you work in studio sessions out here in Hollywood, you just kind of you're working with strangers, but you never actually know what you're going to end up discussing. And sometimes you have like these therapy sessions with someone you just met, and I think that's what separates the music industry from many different industries, is that you have to kind of naturally always have your guard down if you want to make something really cool, I think. So for that one, it was no different. We got to talking a lot about faith and spirituality and just kind of what was our priority up to this point in our life, and the topic of self-forgiveness and self-love seemed to be a constant theme in our discussion. And so that song is about really just like giving yourself the benefit of the doubt and forgiving yourself and loving yourself and saying it's okay, and kind of stressing the importance of living in the moment, and you don't have to go into a time machine and to right your wrongs. You can do it now and move on. And for me, that's always been a really big challenge, and it's something I still need to work on. So I'm happy I got a chance to say that out loud, because I think a lot of other people have really resonated with that song and have felt the same way. So it's a really special one, I think.
That's awesome. And thank you for sharing. And it's beautiful. So thank you. If you haven't heard the song, check it out. It definitely is going to impact you guys for sure.
Thank you.
This leads, we bounced around on a couple different songs, and we talked a little bit about the album itself. I feel like I've listened through your previous albums, and it sounds, there's tinges. You certainly know that it's your music, but on this album in particular, it feels like you've experimented maybe with some new sounds. We talked about this beautiful kind of melodic piano on Second Time Around. We talked a little bit about some of the stripped down instrumentals. There's things like soul from the Motown side of things. There's some kind of tropical vibes, kind of trop house vibes. Mm-hmm. Can you talk maybe a little bit about how your sound is evolving? Is that something you even think about? We talked about the songwriting process. Do you think about sound evolution, or is it just whatever kind of comes out of your mind at the time? I'd love to learn a little bit more about what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, it is something I think about. I think through doing a lot of touring, I've realized that certain songs work better live than some others do. Touring has really become a big part of my kind of shtick as like an artist. I think people have seen that my shows are quite different than my records. Like if you pulled up a song on Spotify, you'd probably experience a different side of it live because I'm more energetic. I like to shout a little bit too much, admittedly. And it there's a lot. There's a real punch to it, I think. And my band who plays with me does a great job of facilitating that. But to answer your question, yeah, I do think about that. So going into this album, I had that mindset of like, what songs could I put on this record that would translate really well in the live setting? Of course, everything is on pause right now with touring, but I still wanted to go into this project with the idea of incorporating a lot of live elements. I've grown to really just appreciate artists who can do that, who can like with the day and age of technology, it's so easy just to pull up a software and instead of tracking someone playing live drums, just pull up a live drum sample and put it in. It's easier. A lot of people do it. I don't blame you for doing it, but I kind of wanted to go into this process of putting in the work and getting live elements on every song as much as I could, because I think there's really something special about live instrumentation that we're slowly forgetting in this day and age of fast access to technology and song or samples on your computer. So no, it was a mixture between progressing as an artist and just evolving into someone who was more rooted in a live music sound, but also something that would translate well when the concerts start happening. So I think this is the type of artist I want to continue to be, is someone who works more in that live world. And yeah, I don't know, but I guarantee you, the next thing I put out, it might be way different. My answers always change. So, but for now, that's the artist I want to try and be.
Awesome. And yes, +1, I miss live music so incredibly much. I saw you perform last year when you were in Detroit, I believe at the Fox or Fillmore.
Fillmore, yeah.
2 nights I think you had done. And yes, a lot of energy at that show for sure. It was fantastic. So, I do. Yeah.
I can't help myself.
Yeah, no, I love it. And that's what you pay for, right? You want that ticket.
Right.
You don't want to go to the show and just hear the song played just like it is on the album. You want that extra oomph that comes with the live performance. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's awesome. Let me ask you, you kind of an ad hoc question here that popped into my mind as you were talking about, the evolution and how you've changed your sound or how you've kind of progressed things. Do you ever balance, like, you want to continue progressing as an artist and you want to try new things and you want to explore, that's part of art. Do you ever have concerns that you could go too far in one direction and potentially, I don't know, like alienate your original fans who came to love you for a certain type of sound? Like, we've all heard of bands in the 60s, 70s, 80s who went in a completely different direction. The Beatles went psychedelic and alienated 90% of their fans, but now you look back and it's brilliant. So I wonder if you ever have those thought processes on your end, like, have I gone too far in one direction? Should I stay closer to my core? Or are you like, screw it, I'm going to do whatever I want to do as an artist, and hopefully my fans come with me and see the inspiration there? Right.
That's honestly like always one of, if not the biggest question I ask myself when making an album or a song is, are my fans going to enjoy it? And I think I've finally come to the conclusion that most of them will. I think I'm really blessed to have a fan base that has always accepted the stuff that I do and the risks that I take and the direction that I want to go in with my stuff. And they've always really welcomed it with open arms. Obviously, there's some people that might be more attached to the earlier stuff and might always just like a specific album or a specific sound that I was doing at the time. But most people have been really accepting of it. And I think you don't really get fan bases that are always so forgiving, like, I shouldn't say forgiving, but so accepting like that. But for me, and I think this is, I mean, I love my fans to death, but I think I have no choice but to continue kind of pushing the envelope with me, because that's how I get personal fulfillment out of what I do. So I don't think I could be making the same sound every day, because I wouldn't get any enjoyment out of that. And that's why I made music in the first place, was to have fun and get enjoyment out of it. So I think I personally just have to keep pushing myself more, because that's what's going to put me give me some peace of mind. So if my fans are into it, that's a bonus. But if not, that's okay too. But I think I just need to focus on like what I think sounds good and what I think is the right direction. But yeah, you're right though. Sometimes you can get caught up in thinking too much about what people are going to like about it. But at the end of the day, I think if you yourself appreciate it and you like it, that's really all that matters.
No, that's awesome. Great word of advice, and it's working so far. So keep it up. Yeah. Fingers crossed. Yeah. Well, talking about different sounds, this will be my last question, and then we'll pop up a couple audience questions. So kind of melding together different sounds. So you've collaborated with some really fantastic artists, not just on this album, but others, folks like Ash. We talked about Mark Bassey. We talked about Logic. We talked about Chelsea Cutler, Yoshi Flower, who I love. Do you have a dream collab? Is there somebody that you're like dying to get on the next album? Some Detroit love? Is it somebody that you've been a fan of for a long time? I say, let's put it out there in the universe. Let's put it out there on YouTube and see if we can get some good juju going.
Let's do it, man. No, I mean, let's start with Detroit. That's fitting. I would love to work with Big Sean. I think he's incredible. Yeah. Mike Posner is someone who I think is really great too. And I've done a show with him before, and really nice guy. Maybe our paths will cross at some point. But I think if I had to give one person, like if I had to say one artist, it's probably Kid Cudi. I've been a huge fan of his forever. He's probably my favorite artist like ever. So that would be a dream come true. Obviously, I'm not going to get my hopes up too much, but maybe we're giving some good juju here, like you said, and letting the universe kind of do its course with this. So maybe Kid Cudi hears this. I don't know, but and then oppositely though, like someone like Jack Johnson, I've always wanted to work with too. So it's kind of interesting. Like those are not similar artists by any means, but again, that kind of goes to just what music I'm into and the range of artists that I'm inspired by. So those are two guys that I always kind of bring up when I get asked that question. That's
awesome. Yeah, Mike was great. We actually had him on for a Toxic Google event.
Oh, cool.
Maybe last year he did his walk across America, which was absolutely wild, man. That was grew his big beard. But yeah, that was awesome. So he talked a little bit about that, and we had him on previously for some music related talks. But yeah, he's fantastic too. I would love to see you guys do some stuff together. And I'm obsessed with Kid Cudi. He's so talented, not just musically. He's a great actor. He's been on some of my favorite shows, and he's doing some really cool things. He's got a show kind of online right now that he's doing about faith and all of these really interesting things, like what happens when you die. Like he's just got this like wild mind where he's like really thoughtful about things that are going on. Incredibly talented.
I'll have to check that out. I didn't know that actually.
Yeah. It's really good. If you just do a quick search for it, you can find it up. So let's put some juju out there. Let's get you and Kid Cudi together, and then maybe we can get Kid Cudi on a talk at Google as well.
So it's a win-win for everybody.
Big selfish over here. Putting plugs in left and right. Awesome, cool. Well, let's pop up a handful of audience questions. The first one here comes from Sam. This is awesome. I think let's dig back in here. Could you tell us a little bit more about your creative process?
Again, Sam, there's no really, like I said, there's no formula really to it. It's just always constantly about going into the session with no constructed expectation of what to make. I think sometimes I'll go into studio sessions and be like, gotta make a hit today, like I feel it, let's do it. And more often than not, if that's how you're going into the session, you're just gonna leave with nothing, because you can't force creativity. You really can't force things that in for the sake of music sound good. So I try to go in with open arms to anything and just kind of embrace the day as is. That's pretty good advice for everyone. Just let like roll with the punches. Roll with the punches. But it's no different with me with music. It's just like I'll go into a session and I mean, obviously, like I said to you earlier, Jason, it's like I'll start with melodies first and go from there. But that's really it. I kind of let the session sort of take course and do its thing and let our ideas, if there's a producer I'm working with, let things kind of flow naturally, and hopefully a spark of creativity happens at some point. But it's a strange thing to do for sure, but it's always very fun.
Do you have like maybe expanding on that process, or excuse me, on that question a little bit more? Do you have a process for writing in particular? Do you set aside time where you're like, I'm going to lock myself in a room for a week and I'm going to write some lyrics, or I'm going to put my thoughts down on paper? Do you have any of those stories where you're like at a restaurant, you write down a lyric on a napkin and that becomes a song? Like anything like that kind of comes to mind? Or are you always looking for sparks of inspiration? Or is it more, get me in the studio, once the doors are closed and I'm in the booth, that's when I really start thinking about things as well?
It is most of that, of just going to the studio and then getting in creative mode. But there definitely are times where, I mean, I thank God for the voice memo thing on your phone where
sure.
you can just, hum little ideas and melodies. And again, like I said, for someone who is so rooted in good melodies and trying to always make really catchy stuff. Like I could wake up at 3 a.m. with a little idea, and my wife can attest to this, and waking her up and, you know, humming something in my phone, putting it back on the nightstand and going back to bed, you know, like that happens actually pretty often. And it goes back to what I was saying, you know, you just never know when idea is gonna strike you. And I think it's all about when it does, like capturing it somehow. So whether that's putting it down in your phone, whether that's a lyric and writing it down, you know, just again, like trying to get that lightning in a bottle and holding on to it until you can go to the studio and really flesh the idea out. So yeah, my wife would be a little annoyed with that answer, but you know, I love you, honey, if you're watching, so don't worry about it too much.
I love it. It's awesome you mentioned the voice memo and technology, because you know, I grew up in Ohio, and I spent a lot of time, a massive music fan, and I spent a lot of time going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that's in Cleveland, right on Lake Erie, and they've got this awesome room where it's got, in this protective glass, these napkins and tissue paper and notebook pads of like original lyrics from like Jimi Hendrix, from Jim Morrison. And I'm thinking to myself, as you're saying voice memo, I'm like, those days are gone, man. You can't put a voice memo up at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame someday. Well, like, I miss the days of the writing it down.
100%. And that's actually, I need to go there, by the way, but that's really cool. I didn't know they had that. You're 100% right. And that's what's kind of sad, is like, how are you going to store voice memo? Maybe, I mean, you could always like, someone could hack your phone and, you know, have it saved somewhere. But I will say though, I do have like at my parents' place back home in Michigan, I have I think they actually sent it to me, but I had for my earliest days of writing those crappy rap songs, like we had talked about, I have stacks of paper, of just printer paper with lyrics on lyrics on lyrics. And I was filing through those the other day and just looking at them, and it's really crazy. It's like you said, it's much cooler to see the ideas written on paper and really actually handwritten. It's just a more personal and authentic thing. So that was cool to see. So I'll have to maybe submit those to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame if they're interested. Probably not interested at all, but
hold on to them. Yeah, would be, your fans would love to get your hands on those.
Maybe someday. Yeah,
that's awesome. I'm an analog guy myself. I've got a record player back here. I love you release all your albums on vinyl too. Obviously that's a huge trend going on right now, but I absolutely love it. So yeah, the physical capture of that stuff, the lyrics, the record itself are all fantastic. Totally. Cool. Let's maybe pop one more question up from the audience. Eric, all right. What has been keeping you busy during this pandemic besides releasing the album? Any new hobbies? And correct me if I'm wrong. Are you guys in LA? Are you guys calling LA home right now?
We're about to go back to California right now. Gotcha. We're actually out in Rhode Island working on some more music. So again, it's like, I mean, case in point right now, we're just, I think a hobby of mine. It's weird because like I'm so fortunate to be doing music as a career, because this really is my favorite hobby. And I'm not just saying that. Like when I'm not making or promoting an album, it's the thing that I like to do most is work on the next thing. And so that's what we're trying to do right now. And so, but obviously I know Eric's question, like, I think, how do I also spend my time outside of music? I like to read a lot. I'm a pretty late reader in life. I think most kids didn't love it. Like I shouldn't say most kids, but for me at least, like, it was only if it was like a high school reading assignment or something, like where I had to read a book, where I would do it. But I never really had the patience to just sit down and read. But it's, like I said, it's not until, I'm 28 now, where I've realized how fun it is, and how calming it is with everything going on with technology. It's a cool way to kind of stimulate your brain in a different aspect. So I've been reading a lot of books. I've been painting a little bit, trying my hand at that. Being in California, I live in Venice. And so it's really nice. My wife and I will take our dogs to like the beach and just sort of, leisurely walk around. And I'm really blessed to be where I live, because there's just a lot of beautiful scenery to kind of experience during quarantine and stuff. And it's just, I think I'm constantly finding things that I'm into that I didn't realize. Cooking is supposedly a passion of mine now that I didn't realize I had. My wife is showing me how to make some dishes at home. So yeah, I don't know. There's, like I said, as bad of a time as this is, there has been some silver linings in this, and finding out those new hobbies is one of those for sure. Yeah,
that's awesome. And for reference, you have released 3 albums in roughly 4 years. So yeah, there's not a whole lot of free time for hobbies in between that. But if your hand's hot, keep the albums coming, because that's exactly where we want it to be. Let's go maybe one more audience question, then we can wrap things up. Let me see if we have one here. There we go. from Kara. Thank you, Kara. What is your favorite song that you have ever made? That's a tough question.
Yeah, it's tough.
Hers. Oh, Kara's giving you some inspiration. Hers are Full Circle and Straight Jacket. Both fantastic songs as well.
Thank you, Kara. I appreciate that. I honestly love both those songs very, very much. I think if you had to like make a Mount Rushmore of my music, those two would probably be on it. I would say though, my favorite that I've made, it's probably either a song called Always Been You or a song called Candle, which was on my deluxe album of my first album, The Story of Us. Don't know why necessarily, just those ones always kind of hit me deeper than others do. But it's like asking who's your favorite kid. You love them all. You love them all equally. It's a tough one to answer. But I appreciate the question for sure.
That's awesome, and thanks for the insight. We'll check those songs out. It's always good to hear you love them all, right?
Yeah.
If you're gonna put them on an album, you hopefully love them. So we understand that.
Right.
Well, listen, Quinn, this has been so awesome. Normally, as you know, we're adjusting here. We normally do these talks face to face in person. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, when we're able to, we'd love for you to visit us. I guess you can visit any Google office you want to visit. We have one in Venice and one just down the street in Playa, so potentially out there. Or selfishly, I'd love to have you into the Google Detroit office for some in-person conversation, and host you there and give you a taste of the Google office as well. So thank you once again for joining us. Congrats on not just the incredible new album, but your career. Best of luck with everything. And more importantly, stay safe out there. Really appreciate you coming in, though. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, man. You too, brother. I'll talk to you guys soon. And then I will be in the office very soon, hopefully.
All right. Awesome. Cheers. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.